And how involved were you on set and making sure that your vision was still intact?
I wasn't super involved. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to take any credit. I was on set for about 1 to 2 weeks, more as like a spectator. I was just there enjoying everything. And I felt like everyone that had a hand in this movie brought their own talent to it and their own passion. And I didn't want to get in the way of that. I probably maybe would have if I thought it was going in the wrong direction, but I never felt that way. So
Hey besties, the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni shadow has overtaken Colleen Hoover's new film. And her new film that came out last week, Regretting You, is performing terribly. And the terrible reception isn't just from the fans that are going to watch it. If you go on to TikTok, you will see dozens of people making videos talking about how awful this film was.
Guys, Colleen Hoover needs to be put in jail. No, she needs to be arrested. Regretting You was not good at all. Like, at least it with us had a plot. It had no plot. Like,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Just to let anyone who heard false reviews about the movie Regretting You, you should know.
Never watched that.
You should know not to go see it and that sucked.
That was the worst thing I've ever seen. That was so bad.
Don't go. Probably.
But it's also getting horrible reviews from critics. Critic review is critical for a movie to be successful because they are the ones who drive people to want to go see the film in theaters. But this new film, Regretting You, came out with not a lot of fanfare. It came out with not a lot of marketing push by Paramount, and the numbers for the opening weekend pale in comparison to What Ends With Us. So despite all of the drama that has happened between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and Wayfair, It Ends With Us was a box office success with the global $350 million globally on a $25 million budget. In order for a film to be considered a success, it needs to gross more than 2.5 times what the budget was. It Ends With Us hit its became a success the opening weekend. Its budget $25 million, opening domestically at $50 million and internationally with a total of $80 million. In the very first weekend, It Ends With Us was profitable. Not so for Regretting You. And the same issues that we see with It Ends With Us are occurring with Regretting You. I question how much of this has to do with Blake Lively. I think a lot of the backlash that we're seeing for Regretting You is partially because of the source material, which is Colleen Hoover doing trauma porn, basically mixing trauma and humor and dark and light and romance and pain into a genre that is inconsistent, not cohesive, and has a hard time getting viewers sort of engaged because they don't know what they're watching. Am I watching a romance? Am I watching a comedy? Am I watching a thriller? It's all over the place. And her weak plot lines and storylines that only go and scratch the surface. And a lot of people are fatiguing on Miss Colleen Hoover using people's trauma and like framing women always in traumatic roles. They're tiring of it. Now, I say that a lot of her backlash, had It Ends With Us performed better in sense of like not having the kind of backlash it did on with the marketing, but that should have been an indication to the wider public and to studios that the problem in and of itself with the backlash wasn't just about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's feud, but rather that mismatch between what it was that I was told I was going to go see versus what it was that I got. I also think that Colleen Hoover's involvement in the editing and downplaying the fact that she wasn't as involved in the film as she claimed, knowing full well that she actually was in the editing bay with Blake Lively. And then publicly, when Blake Lively sued Justin Baldoni, someone that Colleen Hoover had been working with for like 5 years and praised infinitely, she suddenly took Blake's side publicly and distanced herself from Baldoni, and then ghosted everyone on the internet for 2 months when everyone started coming at her. Now, the critics are panning this. What is Regretting You about? The plot is the synopsis. When a devastating accident reveals a shocking betrayal, Morgan and Grant and her daughter Clara explore what's left behind as they confront family secrets, redefine love, and rediscover each other. All right. Well, that's interesting. The plot is a mother and daughter, Morgan and Clara, whose already strained relationship is shattered by a tragic car accident that kills Morgan's husband and Clara's father. The ensuing investigation reveals that the victims were having an affair, forcing the two women to confront devastating family secrets, betrayal, and their own grief as they try to rebuild their lives and their relationships. That's a lot. And then there's also like there's like a love story that gets thrown in there. There's like apparently a lot of time spent in the AMC movie theaters and a lot of mismatched product placement. Hollywood Reporter, which for the longest time felt like it was the outlet for Blake Lively and for like promoting and taking the sides of the ladies on It Ends With Us, they had a scathing review, and it says, Regretting You review. Allison Williams and Dave Franco star in a movie that could end the Colleen Hoover adaptation craze. So the film stars McKenna Grace, Willa Fitzgerald, Scott Eastwood, and Mason Thames. And the film is made by Josh Boone. Now, one of Colleen's like plot's themes is that she often splits like people between their current state and their past. So they're like often reflecting on their past, which creates a little bit more of a challenge for a straight plot line because you have to go to the past of what happened before and then you have to join it with the future. And we saw in It Ends With Us that they didn't spend as much time really focusing on the past. They would interlay some of her journal entries that were in the book as like the young Lily and the young Atlas scenes. And apparently Regretting You has the same problem because it says Regretting You splits itself into two occasionally intersecting plots, that of Morga and Jonah's healing and of Clara's nascent romance. It's not really clear why Clara's storyline needs to be so prominent. It Ends With Us did just fine focusing on adults. Perhaps the calculation, initially Hoover's, now Paramount's, is that they can serve dual customers, mother and daughter, and some sons trotting off to the movies together. One wanting a morally complicated romantic weepy, the other a moony-eyed at Thames. The result, though, is tonally erratic chore that might not satisfy either party. The tragedy side of things is addressed rather offhandedly. Occasionally, the movie will remember the boggling grief and betrayal at its center, only to shrug it off again just as quickly. Williams, a bright and natural actor, is stymied by these emotional shifts. Both she and Franco get lost trying to find their appropriate level. Had the movie really trained its focus on these two ailing grown-ups, I suspect both could have developed more thorough, compelling performances. As is, they seem almost caught surprised and unprepared whenever the camera turns on them. And here's the other aspect. What truly hampers Regretting You is its inescapable unoriginality, its plotting, uninventive, unthoughtful attempts at swoon and heartbreak. With its cloyingly sun-dappled North Carolina backdrops, maudlin score, and severely underdeveloped emotional and social intelligence, the film often evokes a dreaded entity, the cinematic oeuvre of Nicholas Sparks. I have no doubt that aping America's most successful peddler of smarm was in some ways the intention, a riff on his wholesome mawkishness with a little more scandal and sex and alcohol tossed in. But Regretting You winds up just as soggy as any Sparks slop, carelessly laying waste to whatever might have differentiated it, even elevated it. These are not good reviews. The Detroit News, their review, their key takeaway: it's extremely difficult to take any of it seriously when none of the characters seem to know what kind of movie they're in. Maybe it's a frothy beach read, but it's a mess of a movie. The New York Magazine and Vulture said it's hard to tell how much of the humor in this film is intentional. Perhaps the idea is to show how awkward things can happen in the midst of unspeakable sadness. But here it all feels so choreographed, so telegraphed. The abject lunacy ensues. New York Times, it's formulaic and predictable with goofy writing and clumsy editing. The saving grace is the actors who manage to perform even the most ridiculous lines with a straight face. This is Associated Press, and this should kind of score to you how much it sounds just like the feedback for It Ends With Us. Regretting You has its share of grief, but the strange way the tears give way to smiles, quips, and then full-on rom-com corniness feels a little awkward, and then just weird and annoying. Movie Mom. Regretting You is not a good movie. It is soapy and insipid, but somehow, thanks to its actors, it's mildly waiting for streaming watchable. The decision to have Allison Williams and Dave Franco, both in their late 30s when the film was shot, play their characters as teens may be the most egregious example of Regretting You's indifference. That was Slant Magazine. So a lot of the same issues are happening here. With It Ends With Us, there was issues about the multiple plot lines, the fact that it didn't know whether it was a rom-com or whether it was a drama. And here, arguably, there are themes of severe tragedy, right? There's not necessarily domestic violence, but it's a car accident where people died, right? And it's exploring deep betrayal and trauma that happens to people, but then trying to make it in a cutesy rom-com feel. Much like with It Ends With Us, trying to turn a film about domestic violence into a cutesy rom-com where Lily and Ryle have all of this cute banter, and you're like, oh, obsessed with this like relationship she has with Atlas. And you kind of forget that Ryle is a complete psychopath. Right. And it's like they try to explain away that his behavior because he was abused as a child. I think the problem in and of itself, what it comes down to is everyone is fatigued when it comes to Colleen Hoover. They're fatigued. The type of content she makes creates bad reviews, which then negatively impacts the films. And if there's any sort of inconsistency that happens on the set, it's going to turn out to be a mess. One outlet even noted that before the legal blowout between co-stars Blake and Justin, her romantic drama film beat the box office expectation, grossing over $350 million worldwide and $148 million domestically against a reported $25 million budget. But her second adaptation, Regretting You, grossed just $12.9 million in its opening weekend, raising questions about the lasting appeal of her books on the big screen. I think ultimately the criticism for what happens in these films and these with the mismatch between what is it's because her books are terribly written, my opinion. She uses trauma and like humor all together. It's like a dark sense of humor. The mismatch of genres, and audiences they go to films for a specific reason. They don't go for all kinds of feelings at once. They often go because they want to have like a film that's stupid and funny, or they want to see a thriller. They don't want to see both together. Another outlet had this to say: Hoover is a controversial author, known and critiqued for writing books featuring romances that some readers consider to be toxic and anti-feminist, and who therefore resent the author's massive success. As such, they have been typically strong opinions on starry film adaptations of her work. In the wake of the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni lawsuits that emerged from the production of It Ends With Us, there is more discourse than ever. So it was a precursor to a bigger problem, is what I think. I also believe that the audience is truly fatigued with her in general, because I think once this whole thing happened with It Ends With Us, and they saw how her shifting alliances went and how people felt like she turned her back on someone that had given her a chance. Because mind you, even though Colleen was having a lot of success on Book Talk and she has sold millions of books, not all books are well adapted into film, right? And someone has to be willing to take a chance on you. And Wayfair took a huge chance on her by adapting it to film. And the fact that she so easily cast aside Baldoni and Wayfair after everything they had done, after the years they had spent working with her, people felt very betrayed. They also felt very betrayed by her lack of the way that she treated the topic of domestic violence. And I think it's overwhelming that when you have such a public scandal where Colleen is in it, no matter what you want to say, because her book, It Ends With Us, is not associated with what the film is supposed to be about, what the book is supposed to be about anymore. It is literally associated with scandal. And part of that scandal was related to the way that domestic violence was not only handled in the marketing, but also in the film, because there was a lot of criticism about how it was handled in the film. I think that the Blake Lively effect has impacted Colleen Hoover. I think this is a wider symptom of a bigger problem for her. And she has more films coming out. Like she's got another one coming up next year with Anne Hathaway. I think she's got 2 more in the making, but no other projects have been picked up by anyone else. And this film right now, as it is, will likely not break even. It will likely be a loss financially. And when films start losing money and an author is tied to scandal and loss of income, like for a studio, there's a less likely chance that she'll have further movies go to theaters. It was an experiment that I think isn't what America is ready for or wants. It was doomed to fail from the beginning. And this is why I've always said that I feel like Colleen Hoover's book itself and the source material is a huge problem and a huge reason for all the backlash that Blake received. Blake blames Baldoni, but it was all the book and the way it was marketed, and the choice for marketing was Blake, likely with her husband, obviously, and Colleen, who made a coloring book out of It Ends With Us. The marketing for this film regarding you the exact same way on a heavy topic. So the Blake effect has cursed Colleen Hoover, and it's really hard to cancel people in this day and age. But I truly hope that this is a slow end to her success, because I just don't want to watch a lot of movies about women suffering and needing men to save them. It's just an old trope that we need less of in today's world, especially with the political climate. So what are your thoughts? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.